Hello, everyone. Andrew here from Auto Off Topic. So we're all working remote these days, and this podcast is no different. We had Alex Grabau on as a guest, and occasionally his audio kind of dropped out a little bit. It's not a big deal. You'll just have to listen through it. It's only for a few seconds here and there, but you'll pretty much get the gist of everything. I didn't want to scrap the episode over a couple minor issues like that. So anyways, on with the show. Welcome to episode 185 of Auto Off Topic, and welcome back, Brad, and welcome back to our guest for this episode, Alex Grabau. Alex joined us back for episode 29 in 2017 before the Mount Washington, Climb to the Clouds 2017. That was 3 years ago and 156 episodes.
It feels like it was yesterday.
To me, it feels like it was. Yeah, it feels like it was a really long time ago, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. I was being quite sarcastic there.
Well, thanks for having me back, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, and we kind of wanted to talk about. We never had you back to recap your Climb to the Clouds effort, so I thought maybe we could talk about that for a little bit. And I also want to mention, though, so. You are prepping for the 2020 event, and we'll get to that. The record date of this show is today is April 6th, 2020. So people probably know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So right now they still have Climb to the Clouds scheduled for July 10th through 12th. July 10th through 12th, 2020. So as of now, the event is still on. So we'll see, and hopefully we'll get this event. But Alex, how did that 2017 Climb to the Clouds event end up going for you?
Well, it was pretty much storybook as far as I could tell. Right from the beginning, my goal was to get on the podium. I chose the category based on Travis and David being in that category. As you guys can probably tell, you can do some shopping around based on the rules. This year's looks especially strange, but I didn't think that I'd get second, obviously. I didn't think that David was going to crash. And I didn't want him to, obviously. I thought it would be really cool. I felt like third was sort of where I belonged. But it was quite a surprise to get second, I'd say. Car ran well. We didn't have any problems, really, like nothing. No emergency moments that came up. It was really well planned, and I think that's an advantage of having, it's an outcome of having 3 years between events. Get plenty of time to fix stuff.
Well, let us be the first to congratulate you, for 3 years later on your second place.
Thanks, guys. No one's mentioned it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 2017 was a neat year because they did have the big names. You mentioned Travis and David. So actually, obviously, for those who don't know, is Travis Pastrana, who's a fairly well-known, action sports figure and rally car driver now, and David Higgins, who's a world-renowned rally car driver. So, I mean, I think the goal to finish third is a pretty lofty goal, even when they're just the top two. And the fact that you did beat David, and unfortunately he crashed, but that doesn't take away your second place at all. It's still that's quite a feat, and we were super happy to see you up there.
Thanks, guys. There were still a lot of fast people. It doesn't have the depth of like Pikes Peak. Sometimes it really goes year to year, but there are still a lot of fast people that unfortunately don't get a whole lot of mention. And some people think they can do Climb to the Clouds as a first event and place really high. I think that's probably unlikely unless you're a professional driver. And, some people also had bad luck. Their cars broke or they were fighting their cars all weekend. I don't think the Super Chicken was in my class, Paul Tingo, but he was definitely one of them. Having one of the fastest cars on the hill normally, and his car was just a disaster that weekend. So it really shows, about luck and preparation. Everything really has to come together.
Yeah, it's a neat event in how it's run for those again not familiar with the event completely, it's class based. So you have somebody like yourself or Pastrana or Higgins in a full bodied, full caged rally car, but then there's also people like the Super Chicken who are specials built specifically for hill climbing. So obviously, a second place in your class doesn't mean you were the second fastest guy up the mountain. It means you're second fastest in your class. So yeah, there's a lot of other people that certainly don't get the mention that maybe a more recognizable person would, or somebody like yourself who was running against Travis and David would certainly benefit from the national press of that as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And selfishly, that's why I chose that class, because I knew, based on Subaru's presence, and also that my car really did fit the intent of that class. While being older, it's still very similar in design to those Subarus, big turbo, all-wheel drive car. Uh, the other categories, though, were really competitive. Todd Cook, I think his name's Todd Cook, came out from Pikes, and there were some other drivers out there, a few drivers from Pikes that were super fast in those Coyotes, and obviously Tingo didn't have a great amount of luck that weekend, but he was there, and Bill, my friend Bill Washburn, he, it really flew under the radar, but he was faster than I was in his Nissan.
Yeah, he was fifth overall, was he not?
Right. Yeah, and just the credit, it doesn't get talked about as much, if you're not in that main show kind of class. But he ran a faster time than me. So kudos to him.
Yeah, that car is quite a developed chassis too. There's not much left of 240 SX in that car anymore.
Yeah, it's about as developed as it's going to get, I think.
Yeah. And the weather is such a huge thing too. It just happened to work out. The weather was decent, that for that morning or that afternoon when the runs were done. So
yeah, that's something that doesn't get mentioned as much about Mount Washington as it does Pikes Peak, is that the change in elevation and the change in weather from the top to the bottom, or bottom to the top, I should say. It's 80 and sunny at the bottom and 37 and windy up top. So it can be a big change in the car. And, that obviously a lot of the older vehicles and a lot of the full tube frame carbureted vehicles have issues with that.
Yeah, we well, first off, that's absolutely true. And I think that something that's subtle about the weather and that can be very cruel is that it can change on the run. And if some clouds roll in, which they do all the time, for the person behind you, that could cost them 30 seconds. And it might not be rain. It could just be a bunch. It's really high up there. It could be a bunch of clouds, and suddenly you can't see anything and you forget where you are. And what a bummer that is. But last year, so I guess what I'm saying is that if it was raining for everybody, then fine, it's just raining. But if the guy in front of you had a dry run, then you get a wet one because it's drizzling off and on all day. That's really a bummer. And it's just part of hill climb, and it's the way it goes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that situation's even stronger at a place like Mount Washington or Pikes Peak instead of your local regional hill climb, just because of the drastic change in terra from base to peak. It's just such a changing environment.
It's a real moody area too.
Yeah, I know. I spent most of the day pretty high on the mountain between, I'd say, the last, I don't know, half mile to a mile from finish line to about a half mile down. And it was certainly cold up there and borderline uncomfortable most of the day.
Yeah. And the altitude, that's another thing you were mentioning, carbureted cars. So in 2017, one of the big changes we made to the car was add a barometric pressure sensor. I bought a GM map sensor, essentially. We wired that in to have some altitude compensation. And I think that really helped a lot. I don't have any proof that it did, but the car felt better and I didn't have any drivability problems. So that was a very small change, like $30 change. Really went a long way.
I would say that a second in class is proof enough that it worked. So.
True.
It's funny, the GM electronics seem to be a go-to for a lot of modifying older cars.
Yeah, yeah, they really do. It's so weird. I guess they're plentiful and they're cheap.
Well,
Uh,
they do all the research for another purpose, and then you get to advantage it for something else. I know. I just
yeah,
changed the ignition in my 1978 Toyota pickup truck to a GM coil, just because
really.
it's
Yeah.
easier to get, more affordable, and simpler. So
Yep. Yep. Yeah,
it's
I'm a kind of person that likes to have spares too. So if there's an opportunity to get to specify a part on the car that is widely used, then I'll take it because to have a breakdown and not be able to replace a sensor because you bought a fancy one from Europe or wherever, that would be a waste.
yeah, that was exactly part of my thought too when changing the Toyota part. I was like, well, I could search the original Toyota part, or I could buy this GM part that when I drive this thing on a road trip somewhere, God forbid it fails, I can just stop at Napa and buy a new one.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's certainly an advantage, and as we've learned, through you and other friends who have built rally cars, it's always good to have parts availability for your car, and not run that super rare car or a super rare part, because you're going to need it, and it's going to ruin a whole weekend and cost thousands of dollars because you didn't get to run your car and it was one dumb part that broke. So
And it always is. You get this huge upfront investment in lodging and entry fee and fuel and tuning and all these things that just pile on. And, for 2014, I brought a lot of spares, and then in 17, I had everything except an engine. I Over those 3 years, I was able to collect parts and get everything except the spare engine. Now I almost have an engine too. Uh, so it'd be pretty cool. Like if there was a major failure, I'd have just about everything to fix. Unless it was a big crash, that would be a different story.
well, we hope that doesn't happen for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was actually looking through some old camera memory cards this past week, and I came across some pictures of your car back when it was, back in the old DSG days in assembly. Um, it was in the shop still being built. You guys had like a barbecue cookout or something there one day.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I just
yeah,
stumbled across those pictures the other day. I'll have to get them over to you somehow.
yeah. I'd love to see those. That's cool. Yeah, we had a few of those. We did a few. So, like even looking back, so many years ago, I feel like we tried a lot of different stuff, and I'm proud of that. Proud of that effort that we made to find new customers and do some sort of out there events to get people to notice us.
Yeah, well, I know that in the pictures, there's like Ronham and Lagaman Subaru was there, so it's definitely during the heyday of time over
Oh,
there. It was
cool.
a very neat time.
Yeah, that's probably close to the end, probably 2010 or something.
I'd say it was probably late 09, early 2010, based on what my
Yeah,
car was that I had in the
yeah.
picture.
The funny time that we could do an entire podcast on how absolutely stressful and disastrous that was, while also being super cool and interesting.
Oh, it certainly made your name in the area. That's for sure.
Yeah, we were four guys running three cars, two like Group N cars, which they called something else back then, then an open class car. It was too much. We took on a lot. It bit us, but we did okay. It was very stressful.
Yeah. Well, it was cool from the outsider's perspective. I know Andrew and I were both there, and we both were in awe the whole time. So,
Oh, thank you. Can't remember what that class was called. It's just on the tip of my tongue. It's like the American version of Group N. And Subaru had the contingency program. They were paying back money.
Was it like Super Production GT or something?
Not Super Reduction GT is one above that. I'll try to think of it.
Well, speaking of efforts,
Yeah.
as far as Climb to the Clouds, your friend, I forget his last name, Nick, he's a filmmaker.
Yeah.
He did a film on the event, Climb to the Clouds event with the Pleasure EVO, and it's actually on Amazon Prime.
It is.
And I think I'm blanking on the actual title of it. In the notes just like Pleasure EVO movie, but I know it's called something else. What is it called?
I honestly don't know. It could be Pleasure EVO movie. He'll probably hear this and have a laugh about this. Let me look it up. So Nick is a filmmaker from New Hampshire. It's Climb to the Clouds featuring the Pleasure EVO.
Yeah,
Right.
I was just gonna say that it's very specific and to the point.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So Nick is a friend of mine through bikes. He makes movies for a living, a lot of commercial video, but he's a really creative person, and this was sort of a new area that he could sort of get into. So he felt it would be a cool project. I certainly felt it would be a cool project. So we figured out a way to make it work for his crew and for us. And he found a sponsor to help pay for his crew. And then I agreed to put them up for the week. And it just worked out. They did a great job, and man, they worked really hard. They in the middle while it was happening, I think they were all saying, "We're never going to do this again." But then in the end, I think everybody was like, "Damn, that was pretty cool," including me.
Yeah.
It was just, they would leave and go up the hill super early, 7 a.m. or something like that, and come down at the end of the day. It was a long day for the guy.
I know they set up like a camera, like a cable shot.
Yes.
During one of there's like one kind of straight section above the tree line.
Yep.
And I remember seeing it like he had like 2 ladders set up with like a cable camera, and it was such a cool shot that the production crew for the Team Subaru actually, I think, paid him for footage.
Yeah, they did. That's right.
Yeah.
Warwick Patterson.
Yep.
They collaborated a little bit after that. Yeah, that's like Nick's his bread and butter. He knows a good shot. He doesn't care how long it takes to set up. I was like, dude, that's gonna take too long. It looks too hard. He's like, we're doing this. It pays off. He's got that right personality for it. But it was cool. It was cool to take them, and it was cool to see friends from sort of a different area of my life really enjoy motorsport and see what it's all about. And of course, at the end, we had a really nice weekend all together, and a nice video that Nick can add to his portfolio. And so overall, it was great. I don't think we'll be able to do it again without a real sponsor, knowing now how much work it is. But here's to hoping anyway.
Yeah, well, it's on Amazon Prime, and everybody who's hanging out at home, good time to watch it. I think it's like 20, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes.
It's about 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's not super long, but it's like it will keep you engaged for that whole time, so it's really cool.
And I, of course, have a cameo in it.
You do. That's right.
Not that you can make out that's me, but I know it's me because I know where I was standing when you went by.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. My daughter didn't believe me that you could see me on Amazon Prime, so I had to show her that video a while back, just as a kind of a joke. And she doesn't believe it's me because, again, you can't,
Of course,
I'm just a grayed out guy on the side, but
yeah,
it's definitely a one of those moments I got her to watch some rally racing for a little bit.
That's cool.
So what's the plan for this year? What changes, major changes, anything you're going to do differently, running the same class? Do you know who else is planning on running? I don't know what what's been allowed to be said or who's announced things or.
Yeah. So I have seen a start list. It's on Motorsport Reg. I think it's public. For some juicy info and speculation, I think that the start list was really held back for a bit because Subaru I might not have known who was going to drive. And I'm still not even really sure that Subaru has their drivers listed. Although we know it's Travis and Brandon, their new driver, most likely. Uh, so that I was wondering about that for a while because they said they were going to announce it, and we waited probably a month past that date to hear who was in the race. Um, there are the same categories and the same rules as before, but the selections are weird. I'm trying to think what car it was now. There's some really old cars with V8s in Unlimited that are like full bodied cars. There is one of those Coyotes in my class. Um, Tingoed is unlimited. It's just going to be weird. Like the line between open class and unlimited is very blurred, and it's almost like they're the same thing. And if you read the rules, there's no way to really understand what car is in what class. So I thought that was weird, but um, yeah,
That almost doesn't sound like a fair setup to have a Coyote car
it
in the same.
it doesn't. It seems kind of weird, and I don't know. I don't know if anybody's gonna be switching around at the last minute. Personally, I'm okay with it. There's always going to be something that I try not to focus in on these things too hard and obsess about them because, like we were saying, the weather changes, people's cars break. And I feel like you just bring bad karma on yourself if you start complaining about things. It's like, just do the event, have the best event you can possibly have, and the cards fall where they will. Yeah, as far as changes go, um, to the Evo, I've done a lot of stuff since 14. It doesn't really feel like it, but uh, I noticed for the first time that the car was a little under braked, and I made a point in practice in 2014 during the middle of the week to try to use the brakes as much as I could, knowing that if I was using the brakes, I was entering turns as fast as I could be. So as I got more practiced on the course, I found that even at low boost, I didn't have enough brakes. So that was like the first thing on the list, get a better brake kit. So got a Brembo Motorsport brake kit on the car now, like radial mount calipers, and that's up front, and the rear is just like standard Evo 789 first, with like a conversion adapter from this place in New Zealand to adapt larger rotor and caliper. And then the new spindles up front. So Evo, this is where it gets weird. They're Evo 5, 6 spindles and bearings and hubs. Really, the bearings all the same for all Mitsubishi. So, but now the advantage is you get those 4-bolt replaceable bearings. You can just like pop out and do at the event if you have a problem, versus like pressing the hub apart. And Evo 6 steering rack, which is a half turn quicker lock to lock than the Evo 3. Evo 6 control arms, which are a little wider track. They're aluminum, so a little lighter. And then, of course, the final piece were dampers. The car has always been on really questionable suspension. I use Evo 8 parts for the dampers because they're more widely available. And what I did in the back was to modify some lower arms and build some custom lower arms that accept Evo 8 struts. So the whole drivetrain sort of updated in a way that it will accept more popular parts and newer parts. So the dampers now are a 3-way adjustable with hydraulic bump stop, and they're made by RSSP. and I haven't tested them yet. And I know they're going to take some time to set up, so I hope to do a couple of practice events before. So all in all, like this thing should be way better. And just a general tidying up of the car too. Little things that go a long way, like splash guards that I didn't have before, so the car got all muddy inside. Now that won't happen. So yeah, a bunch of work, and you know, it's like 3 years of tinkering slowly and saving money to get this stuff. And, here we are.
It's that whole sum of the parts versus one big change kind of thing. Like you've done
a
lot of little things.
Yeah, and I've got to test the brakes. I did a track day with the brakes. They're way better. The dampers I have tested. What I found with the old dampers was that even when you come way down in the spring rate, they were still over damped because they were designed for a heavier car. You know, Evo 8's probably 500 pounds heavier. And so you put these soft springs on for bumpy tarmac, and you're still like, you're not really using the spring. The damper is so slow, you're still like, it feels like you have stiff springs, but you don't. So what happened in Mount Washington was you'd hit a series of these like frost heaves, and the car would just like basically bounce in the air, just skipping like a rock across the road. It was a real handful, and it was hard to hold the wheel. So I thought to myself that like stock suspension would probably be better than what I had. So that was the way I started this process. I was like, I'll just find something that's very soft, and then work my way up. And I'm not convinced what I have now is the right solution, but I think it's probably the second way.
Well, sometimes you got to remember that the people who built the car originally engineered it a certain way for a certain reason. So
absolutely,
when you go making changes, you can certainly make improvements, but you can also go backwards if you do the wrong thing. So
yep, it's like the worst news for a tuning shop, but like the way to go when you're a car owner. Trust that engineers did their job.
Right, and like you said, you did a lot of little changes, and that's better a lot of times than starting from scratch. I mean, you had a proven car. You finished second in class. You finished like fifth overall. You did pretty damn well with the setup you had before. So there's no reason to fix what's not broken. Just improve on what you have. So
yeah,
that sounds interesting.
And everything aside from the suspension, I would put in that category. The suspension, I'm not saying I have it right, but if I were to have it right, if I had a team like Vermont Sports Car and experts like them on chassis setup, there is easily a minute in the car to like take off. The car would be super fast, but not necessarily with me driving, but the car would be very competitive. We're not talking like second place. We're just saying like time wise, because the margin between me and first place was quite big. So yeah, I mean, for example, we were able to bring our friend Franz Diebold up, who did all the ECU tuning for us, and he would do some data logging for us after each run, and he would look at how often we were flooring the gas, right? Like just look at throttle position. It's a really simple way to know if you're giving it like 20% throttle the whole time, there's no reason to turn up the boost, right? So we did some very basic analysis like that, and I ran 300 horsepower basically the whole weekend, and it was 14 pounds of boost. I had another 200 horsepower available, but I just didn't use it because the suspension wasn't good enough. So
I'm sure anybody listening probably knows the feeling of driving a car with like a blown out suspension, where if you're going around a turn and you hit an undulation or a bump in the road, the car wants to skitter left or right, which probably is very similar to the feeling you had in the car being oversprung and under dampered.
Yep.
So that's similar thing to having blown out suspension on a street car. It's sketchy. Like you're on a high speed on ramp and you get bad suspension and the car starts bouncing and you're just along for the ride at some point.
The way it like translates into grip, if you ignore the bouncing part, is like if you're in the middle of a turn and you're on pretty grippy pavement and the car feels set up and you're set into the turn and there's like a stripe of gravel and it just does like a little walk on you. Like that's the sensation you get when the car is leaving the ground and you're in the middle of this turn. Like it just like starts stepping in unpredictable ways.
And that's certainly not a comfortable feeling on a cliffside high
No, it's not.
maximum attack run.
Yeah, it's not. So, we'll see. There could be some surprises in here. Maybe this is really going to pay off and the placing is the same or maybe the placing's worse, but I take 30 seconds off my time. That would be awesome.
I'm super excited for this year's event, and I really hope it goes off when it's planned to go off, because that's peak time in New England, and I plan on flying back to be at the event. So it will be definitely.
I really hope it happens too. And I was just on a call about New England bike racing, and all the races are canceled this year pretty much. I'm trying to maintain hope that the event will happen. So we'll see. I feel anything can happen.
Everybody stay home and get healthy, so we can have
do a good job.
Yeah,
do a good job. See this through. We need to do this.
Yeah, for sure. It'll make life a lot better in the near future. So that's for this and every car event and every bike event and every outdoor event. So
absolutely. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, we got a communication a week ago that said we're on until the hosts say we're not. The host being Mount Washington.
And are they government run, government funded? Must be, right?
No, it's a private road.
Oh,
isn't that weird?
That's very weird.
It's owned by a family.
Yeah, it's a private toll road.
Yeah. Surprisingly, not the longest private toll road, which is Mount Equinox. If you're in for some trivia, it's also in Vermont. Well, that's in Vermont, not Hampshire.
Oh, maybe it's actually better for this kind of event to be privately owned than government owned.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
I know they did have to close Tuckerman's up there for skiing. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think like the rest of it is public land, right? Like it's a state park.
Yeah.
But the road is private land, which is just strange. It's New Hampshire.
Live free, right?
Yep. Exactly. So if worst case, let's hope that they push it a year, right? And not 3.
Yeah, that would be awful. That'd be a lot of people pretty upset, spending a lot of money prepping cars and getting.
Yeah.
The problem is going to get to a point where it's a point of no return, where you have to cancel it because people are going to have accommodations and rental vehicles and rental, stuff, and it just there's too many moving parts to not cancel it ahead of time. So. Right. I mean, we're probably there. I mean, all the lodgings booked. Right.
Yeah. So, you buy fuel. If you buy a drum of fuel and it's $1,000, you're just going to sit on it for 3 years.
Yeah, not a good plan.
No. I think we'll know more. Even a month, I bet we'll know more. See how this is going. That's crazy.
All right. So, as far as Climb the Clouds, that's very cool. But I know in the last couple of years you've been doing some JDM importing of cars.
That's right. Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit because you've had a couple early WRX STIs, which is interesting. And one of them is a blue 555 car.
That's correct.
Which I don't really know a whole heck of a lot about. If you want to talk about that car.
Yeah, sure. So this blue one is a 95. It's a version 2. It's a 555 edition, which is sort of interesting. Like they made 500 of them, and they dolled up a regular STI version 2 a little bit. It got the R8 roof vent, got Speedline wheels. It's got the 53C blue color. And I think those are the main differentiators between that and a regular STI version 2. It also had an optional sticker pack that you could get, and the dealer would apply it, which was that like full 555 livery.
So that blue color is like the famous Colin McRae car, right?
Yeah,
Green blue.
yeah. Which is a funny thing because the original Pro Drive Blue was a Renault color, and it was happened to be what they had on hand, and it was meth eels, and that was the name of this blue, and it was a lot brighter than 53C, which is like almost a navy in some light. But somehow, eventually, they landed on this darker color. But if you look at some of the very early Pro Drive GC8s, they were like a much brighter blue than this one.
Closer to the World Rally Blue, or
yeah, it was closer. It was different still, but definitely closer. I preferred the Renault color to the World Rally Blue. But yeah, so that's three like very distinctive and famous blue colors for one car, which is interesting.
I don't think I ever noticed the earlier cars being brighter, but I'm not quite as deep in the minutia of it, not owning one. So
you can really nerd out on all this stuff for sure. So the V2 was different than the V1 in a few ways. The V1, which is the silver car I had, was if you look at it in a certain light, it was a prototype, and what that meant for Subaru was that they took a WRX, which started GC8 WRX was starting in '93, and so for '94 they said let's make an STI. They took WRXs off the production line, brought them to the STI factory plant, as you call it, plant. It wasn't really a factory, and basically rebuilt them. They took the engine out. The version 1 had a different head. It was like a lightweight valve train, hand ported head, forged pistons. Really cool, like a really cool closed deck 2-liter. And then when you went from the version 1 to the version 2, Subaru had made their case for producing the STI, so the version 2 was made on a production line. And the engine, now the engine badge read tuned by STI, whereas on the version 1 it said hand built and tuned by STI. So the version 1 was like a super cool car because they hadn't like fully figured out what they were doing. It was probably really expensive to make. The wing was aluminum. It was really cool, really neat car. And I bought that one to sell though, so I had to stick to it and not keep too many cars around.
Yeah.
To a guy who's become my friend in Pennsylvania, and kept the blue one. And as you guys probably saw over the course of the year, I restored the blue one.
Yeah, it didn't need a full restoration, but you definitely put a lot of work into cleaning it up nicely.
Yeah, that's right. Like the body, I would say, was pretty full, but I didn't do the engine or transmission or suspension. Cleaned up quite a bit, but the engine, it was running, so it's running nice, so I didn't want to take it apart.
And it's a neat car. It's kind of like you had the early car, which is desirable, and then the 1 of 500 555 car, which is desirable.
Yeah,
it's hard to choose which one you want more.
Yeah, right. And it's funny, the version 1 had a sticker, like it was a Acropolis Rally tribute badge on it, and I want to get this right. It was like said like 1 of 25 or whatever on this badge. And the way Subaru did it was they probably didn't know how many they were going to make, so they made 1 of 25. But then the next month they made another 25, and the next month they made. So all these people have these badges that are 1 of 25, 1 of 25, 1 of 25. But it was just repeating every month. So they had a production number set for each month, and they hit it and they reset and do it again. Yeah,
that's almost kind of like the American market Galant VR4s that are all numbered.
Totally.
But it really doesn't mean anything. They just stuck them on at the port later on.
They're
not in production order at all.
So it was actually 100 per month. So they made 1,200 version 1s and
Okay.
500 of these 555 version 2. And then all of the RA, like you see, Subaru has so many designations. Like for Evos, it's easy. You get RS and GSR. But for Subaru, there's so many more. The RA is basically the RS, except with Subaru, the RAs were all built to order. So they were all custom. So you could get RAs with some of them would have extra options, I guess, that the others wouldn't. But they were like the lightweight racing version. And those often came through with a hand-built engines way in the beginning. Like the WRX RA is an example of that. And that was around before the STI, but it also had the hand-built engine.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It's neat that era of homologation cars is really cool, and especially for the the Halo cars, pretty much of the Evo and the STI at the time, is the amount of stuff that changed every year and the improvements that they made, and they're really neat cars to get really deep into and learn about, because there was certainly a cool era.
I love it because I like to think about, you see these, you hear, learning about Ferrari or something. Oh, everyone has a little different, and I can place the production time based on this stitch weld was changed. And who would have ever thought that with a Subaru you could get almost into that level of detail with things being handmade and production being 500 or 400 in some cases. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely not the kind of vehicle you'd expect, but
Right.
maybe a normal everyday person wouldn't expect, not somebody who's been needing in these junks forever. So
that's right.
So as far as importing a JDM car, I mean, I know you've done it a few times now, 3 or 4
Yeah.
anyway.
In all different ways.
Have you taken the dive and done it without a broker yet, or are you still?
No, and I don't think I ever will, because there's so much value to having one, and I think it was Brad that connected me with Craig.
Yep.
Who I talk to almost every day now, and he's become a good friend of mine. What a great guy, and how difficult it is to find someone like him in this industry. Unfortunately, it's very, very hard. But his service is invaluable. I guess speaking generally, if you were an American and you wanted to participate in an auction in Japan, you need someone to place a bid for you, and that person is going to be in Japan at the auction. So if you don't know that person directly, and I don't know how you would, you need to hire someone from the U.S. that does, like Top Rank or any of these companies that do that. There's a lot. They're popping up everywhere now. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, which is a problem too, because picking the right one is
absolutely, yeah. And so I say I would never would do it without someone. It's because, for one, you really can't, and two, there aren't many people you can trust. There's a few models I think that these guys operate on. One is like they take the risk model, and then if it pays off for them, they sell you a car at a high margin, right? Like when you see a GTR that's $40,000, and the prices are always fluctuating. Let's say it's 40. You can probably assume they're making 10 grand on that car, somewhere around there. But if you want to accept some risk and you do due diligence with someone like Craig, for example, who's like a smaller dealer, and you assume that risk with that person, and they say, listen, we've had the car inspected, it looks good, everything looks right, but I'm charging you a fee instead of selling you this car. You can get one for less, but you also take on some risk.
You're still buying the car, so you're buying it sight unseen no matter what.
Right.
So Yeah, I would recommend Craig to anybody. He's always been a good guy, and I've been talking to him all the time about bringing a car over, and hopefully this year, or well, this year's changed a bit now, but maybe next year I will be myself. So
Nice.
and
Great.
I'll be using Craig for sure.
And that's Craig Pollock of Bonsai Rides, in case anybody's.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna say what's Craig's company? I don't mind plugging it here.
Yeah, no, it's Bonsai Rides. His website's not always updated, but he's not a website guy, so just give him a call, email him, or call him, and talk to him. Yeah.
He's got a I recommend.
Yeah, my dealings with him have been great. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on him, but he's the kind of guy where we had a little issue with paperwork, not his fault, and we wound up at his house for a lot longer than we were supposed to be, and his wife made us dinner. So
Same.
He's a good guy. So
yeah. So like, there's other ways, right? You could try to do it yourself. You could. I don't even know how, without the connections, someone would do that. I worked with a different broker for another car, and it worked out. But after the transaction was over, this was some time ago, I realized how exposed I was just about at all points of the transaction, to the point where, like, this guy could have just disappeared off the face of the earth with my money, and I would have had almost no recourse, because I didn't know where his business was. I didn't know anything, and it happened to work out. But you can do direct if you're not buying a car at auction, and there's a lot of reasons to look in different places, right? So if you're buying a race car, it's a real person-to-person transaction. The price is set. You can negotiate. Race cars are generally easier to import. So that would just be a different scenario. You wouldn't necessarily need a broker, although you'd probably want a customs broker on your end to do the paperwork once it arrives in port, and to make sure everything's taken care of in that department. If you wanted to buy a car in Canada that was 25 years old, you could just go get it and drive it back and claim it at the border, and they charge you tax and you drive over.
Yeah, that's probably the simplest way.
Yeah, it's super easy.
Except the fact the cars there have been there for 10 years, and they're
right.
rusty. Like Canadian rusty. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like New England times 10. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. And I have another car coming. It's another STI. It's a version 3. It'll be for sale. It generally takes about a year to find a good car too. So if you think you're the kind of person that wants to buy a certain model, give yourself plenty of runway, because it takes a long time. We've probably bid on 30 cars in the last couple of years and bought 3. So that's how sort of the ratio looks.
Well, you're talking about a car like an STI too. You're talking about a commodity that's a desirable, a GTR, an Evo, an STI. These are the cars that people know, what people want. So there's a much larger pool of people trying to buy them. So the good cars do go for more money, and they go fast. They
do, and when the car hits 25, the price almost doubles because the U.S. market's open. I think that's why you see a lot of these Japanese car dealers in the States, like down south. They have all these kind of like non-desirable sedans that are, in the $10,000 range, because it's hard to fill inventory. It's hard for that. They need to keep turning cars over. There just aren't enough clean Evos out there. Incidentally, Evos are like double the money of STIs. There's so much money.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Don't know why. I think the price will come down with Evo 4, because there are so many Evo 4s out there. Once those are legal.
Well, I've been watching the Evo 1, 2, 3 market pretty closely, because that's what I'm in the market for, essentially.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that as each generation car comes up, the last generation falls off a little bit.
Yeah.
So like an Evo 2 is now less than an Evo 3, rightfully so, because the Evo 3 is now legal. So, and I'm not sold myself on a 1, 2, or 3. It's going to be whichever one I find the nicest of. When I'm ready to jump. So I think that I'm waiting for the Evo 4 might help me in the Evo 3 market, possibly.
Mhm.
We'll see. If the trend goes the same, we'll see how it works.
Yeah,
So,
Huh.
they do come up.
yep, they do. I've watched a few and gone, not yet.
I've seen a few for sale here that were really clean and basically the same price that you could land one here yourself for.
Yeah.
So, if you can get one under 20 grand, you're doing really well, especially if you can inspect it here in person. That's like extra insurance.
Yeah, there's been a few pretty clean ones I've seen in the 18
Yeah.
range. And
Yeah.
that's
Good price.
while not cheap, is not out of the realm of a possibility
Right.
at this moment.
Right.
I gotta get there before I hit 30.
Once we're out of the current situation we're in and the market rebounds a little bit, I think we're going to start seeing some pretty incredible prices for STIs and Evos. We've seen Lancias go from 20 and 30 up to $100,000 in only 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's what's scaring me about waiting.
Right. Oh yeah, and I think it'll happen with all of them too. Like the whole Group A homologation period, they're just going to get really.
Yeah, I've been following follow the Group A hashtag on Instagram, and it's recently like tripled in activity.
Yeah, really. No kidding.
I don't know what the purpose is or why it is, but it certainly has.
We're gonna have $12,000 Galant VR4s.
Hey, I mean, my Galant VR4 is hopefully going to help fund the purchase of this Evo, so we'll see what happens.
It's such a funny subject to go on because the prices never changed on that car. No one cares.
They recently they've gone up a little.
Have they really?
Yeah.
To like
On really nice
grand?
ones, yeah.
Yeah, really clean car, as we've seen some in the teens.
Yeah.
And
Really?
sold for, not asking.
Really?
What did that?
Yeah.
What was that one on BAT? That was
Well, BAT is always an outside case, I think.
yeah, but it was a really nice car though. I think you bought it for 13 or 15 grand.
Yeah. Anything sub 100,000 miles that hasn't been modified heavily. That's a solid Southern car, not a New England car. Has
They're
been
like
going
8 to 10 now.
yeah 8 to 10 for 100,000 and more over that. So
Finally.
it is good. I mean, honestly, even the Eclipses and Talons are going up that way now. So
Wow.
I think that it's finally
Different cars. Yeah, I think.
Hey, I mean, the same car essentially.
Yeah.
So I think we always go back to Mitsubishi because that's our thing. It's
Mhm.
just where we stick. But even low mile clean Starions for a while were up in the high 20s for a little bit. For oddly enough, for sub 40,000 mile cars, which is obviously a rare vehicle at this time, but still for a long time they were still $2,000 or $3,000.
Do you guys think a Galant RS would be more valuable than a U.S. market VR4?
No.
I always felt like it.
No,
Yeah, it should be.
I don't think any of the imported Galants really people find them to be worth anything. Like you probably end up losing on those for whatever reason. They just don't take off very well.
Well, the problem is if you have a vehicle that's available in left-hand drive, the market for owning that vehicle in right-hand drive is less. And you can look at Toyota Supras or Acura NSXs in the same
NSX
plant.
is a good example.
A right-hand drive NSX is worth 10 to 15% less than a left-hand drive one of the same mileage and the same value.
Integra Type R is another one.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I think it's the right-hand drive case only makes sense if the vehicle was never sold as a left-hand drive car or not readily available as a left-hand drive car.
Yeah. Given the amount of work that people put into Galants, I feel like it's a no-brainer that you would buy a Japanese one and convert it to left-hand drive with U.S. parts.
So it's not that easy.
Well, I mean, but think about what people do with those cars. They strip them all away. They do, the rear steering delete and subframe bushing and all this crazy stuff all the time. You could get a car without any of that junk in it right away with a limited slip rear diff, 16G, the right bumpers, everything. It's great.
The only problem is it requires cutting the firewall out to do right to left-hand drive in those cars. So it's not a simple process. I can tell you from my Galant, somebody actually bought a front clip and tried to turn mine into a right-hand drive car for some reason. And it only exists today because our friend Jeremy bought the car as a right-hand drive and bought a rusty junk left-hand drive American market car and actually cut the firewall out of both cars to put the left-hand drive firewall back in my car. And it was a lot. If you have a few extra moments and you want to watch a ridiculous thread, he's got the amount of work he put into switching this thing to left-hand drive is it's awe-inspiring, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So
yeah, that sounds like too much.
It's not that simple. I would buy a right-hand drive Galant VR4 because you can get them fairly inexpensively because they were hundreds of thousands of them, I think.
So. Yeah.
And it's probably the cleanest way to get one in the U.S. now because none of them are that nice anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like so few and far between.
Yeah. Everything about the U.S. car that I don't like is not on the Japanese car. So it's very attractive to me, even though it's right-hand drive.
Yeah. Cloth seats and limited slips.
Yeah.
Those are the big things.
Yeah. And the good bumpers. I can't stand the U.S. bumpers.
See, at this point, I keep my U.S. bumpers because everybody's changing them out.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, that makes sense.
And also the Japanese market cars are available two-tone, which is cool.
Yeah. That is cool. Anyway, they come up every now and then, and I always wonder, it seems risky. Like a first-gen Legacy, they're worth a fortune. An RS.
Yep.
But the Galant, it's brother from another mother. Still no respect.
Well, Mitsubishi doesn't get the same respect as Subaru does in all of the markets for some reason. I'll never understand, but it's funny because some of their cars are worth a good amount of money. You know, a wide body Starion in Australia or Japan or in Europe is worth 3 times what it's worth here.
Yeah, such a good looking car too.
Right, but then here again, they're $2 or $3 grand for a decent car with some miles on it. You know, maybe 4 or 5 now, but at the most, you're paying $5 grand for a driver quality car, and that same car in Australia is $10,000 to $15,000 American. Which is
I can't remember even seeing one for sale in years.
Oh, there's being in the market. There's tons of them.
Oh, really?
I just gave one away, so
it's not looking in the right place, I guess.
There are a lot of them. Yeah, you just need to. When you're in the world of them, you see them, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works. I don't see a lot of hill climb stuff. I'm not looking for it. So,
right.
Then there's the Lancer GTO, which is super rare and expensive.
Galant GTO.
Galant GTO, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few Mitsubishis that kind of break the mold, but as a general rule goes, they're always a discount alternative of another vehicle. You know, you want a Land Cruiser? Nah, buy a Montero. Or a Pajero. You know, you want a Mark I Escort? No, buy a 70s Colt rally car. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
They're discount version of another vehicle. Like that's why I love my 70s, my Colt Lancers, because they drive a stock Colt Lancer drives like a stock Mark I, Mark II Escort. It's the same architecture. It's the same kind of thing, and they competed in rallies. But you know, an Escort's $20 to $30 grand, and a Colt is $20 to $30. So it works out.
Right.
I would love to import an AutoZam, an AZ1, before they get too terribly expensive.
Yep.
Yeah, those are neat. Small. I don't know if they'd fit in one very well, but they're cool cars.
I mean, I fit in one. I sat in one, and I'm not a small person, so I think you'd be fine.
6'3".
That's pretty tall. Yeah.
How tall are you?
Not quite as tall as you, but
that's the catch, I think. But who knows? I can slouch.
Yeah,
just drive around with the door open.
Exactly.
I mean, you want everybody to know it has gull wing doors. That's the whole point of having it.
Yeah, you got to floss.
There's a few interesting cars out there that I'd like to import, and most of them obviously being Mitsubishis. But I just haven't done it yet because the time has never been right. And every time I've almost done it, I've bought something here. You know, I was working with Craig to import a Galant VR4 actually probably 5 or 6 years ago. And then before I did it, I bought another car here because it came up, and I'm impulsive and couldn't handle not buying the car here. And then the money's gone, so I just haven't done it yet. I need to do it. So
we've looked at a lot of different cars. Anything from Mercedes 190 to Pulsars, um, K cars. What's the Dangan ZZ?
Yeah, the Mitsubishi Minica
Dangan.
Yeah,
And
I drove one of those a couple years ago. It certainly didn't help the need to buy one. So
yeah, I know. I know but it's interesting.
I've heard Mini Coopers are good to source from Japan.
yeah, there's tons of them over there.
Yeah, there's there's tons of Lancias apparently too, right? And E30 M3s. There's a lot of those over there too.
Yeah, but again, the problem with an E30 M3 is getting it over here. Is it right-hand or left-hand drive, right? Is
Left.
it going to be...
Like they're all left-hand drive.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Which is cool. And I think the Lancias are left-hand drive too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Either way, there's a lot of interesting cars ripe for the picking over there because it's so expensive to own an older car over there that they get sold. So
yep,
it's definitely worth it for our market where it's actually cheaper to own an older car.
That's true.
Significantly. I think the insurance on my daily driver is as much as the insurance on 5 old cars. So
yeah, and I discovered the joys of antique auto insurance this year.
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Oh yes,
so good.
Yeah, it's great. I can't say enough about how Haggerty's been for me. So
yeah, I wasn't gonna plug them, but that's who I use. It's
awesome. I give them enough money every month that I'm totally fine with plugging them because they're a good company.
And I tried to. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the thing is that they get what it is to be a car enthusiast that wants to use their vehicle. A lot of the other companies don't want you to use your car.
Yeah,
Haggerty is okay with you using it. So
yeah, they are, and I think they understand also that you're trying not to crash.
Exactly,
because you like the car. So
yeah,
it seems like
good
organization.
And people I've met from inside the company, I know that we did. Andrew and I do a lot of those Radwood shows, like you went to one in Boston.
Yeah.
And Haggerty's big involved with that. So we've met some people that actually work for Haggerty, and they're all, not every person there's a car person, but a lot of them are, and that helps a lot. So anyway,
it was good to see them
plugging Haggerty.
onward.
Yeah, Andrew, type out a form email. We need to call them.
Yeah. So I mean, it was great having you on again.
Thanks, man.
Is there anything you want to plug? Any place you want people to find you?
Is there going to be a new livery on the car this year?
I don't know, man. I have talked to a couple people about it, and I hope so. Maybe to some limited degree. There's nothing on it right now. It's a blank slate. Have you guys seen Final 10th, which used to be We the Terrors?
Yeah. I just got a package from him last week.
So I've been talking to him a little bit, and it would be cool for them to help design something, but we're going to be coming into crunch time soon, so we'll see.
Right.
But,
are you still involved with the same company from last year, or 17?
Wait, sorry, say again?
Are you still involved with the same company, the sponsor from before?
No. So I got Wheels before. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
No, there was the dog company. I didn't want to.
Oh yeah, I'm involved in that. It's my wife's business.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% positive, and I didn't want to plug something if it wasn't cool anymore. So the old livery was the happy dogs in the windows for Beantown House.
Exactly. Yeah. And she is very supportive of all this crazy stuff. So yeah, I have her support, and I'll give her that worldwide recognition on the side of my car. So, valuable landscape on the side there.
Yeah, well, it was whimsical too. Like, it was neat looking. So
yeah, and so an artist named Shayna Pasek did that, and she's on Instagram, and she's really awesome. And we basically communicated that we wanted a bunch of dogs hanging out of the car and going on a trip somewhere. and she pulled it off. And also, like, vinyl's so expensive that to do a whole car is like thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And I didn't want to do that. I mean, I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to pay for it. So I tried to find something that would be like somewhat limited in cost and in difficulty to apply. So that's what we came up with. There were some limiting factors there. So she did a great job with what I envisioned. And, yeah, it was fun working with her too. But yeah, we'll see. It might be something completely different this time. I don't know. I'd like to do a throwback kind of looking thing.
Like a classic Mitsubishi scheme?
Yeah, maybe. That's what I was thinking. But it would have to be like a not well-known one, maybe.
Well, there's definitely some cool ones out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But, all right, where can people find you on the internet? Any place that they want to see pictures of your car? Or?
If they're into cars, they probably want to follow car account, which is Pleasure EVO with 2 E's. So Pleasure and Evo, no spaces. That's on Instagram. That's it. If you want to hear me yell at the president, you can follow me on Twitter, but you don't want to do that.
Actually, Andrew, I need to open a Twitter account for this podcast. We've never done
it. Maybe. I don't have the bandwidth for it.
Don't do that. It's a hell site, and it'll make you depressed.
Well, it's just extra eyeballs and ears.
Yeah, maybe.
Fine, Car Twitter's an interesting place. There's a lot of journalists on there that are really interesting.
Yeah, I was at Radwood in Austin just before this whole world-changing event kind of happened.
The Rona.
In February. And a friend of mine belongs to a part of Twitter called the Weird Car Twitter. Yeah,
I think I might be like not part of it, but I might, it might be infecting my timeline a little bit.
Yeah, and a bunch of them got together, and our friend Bradley invited us to go with him, and so I met a bunch of those people, and they're all like on the outskirts of automotive counterculture and world counterculture, and they're a good group of people. It was fun.
Yeah, definitely. That we're talking about the same thing here. I found this area.
Yes, but I'm not on Twitter, so I don't know anything about it.
Instagram's good for now. So I'll try to do some updates on that. And every time these events come around, everything is better. Like the cell phone service is better. Available platforms to communicate are better. Technology to use to communicate is better. So I don't know. There'll be more videos, maybe some live stuff if we have service with Pit.
Excellent.
More in car. Yeah. So that's it. I guess I have a YouTube channel, but it's kind of lame. So just me.
They can see your video of on Prime anyway. So what is the YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel, I think it's just my name. And then the one that the video is on is like totally different. It's Autologic or something, and that they were the ones that sponsored the crew. And soon after, they're like, "Whoa! This is a race. Ooh, we can't get behind that." And they're like, "Take it down." And Nick had to make some changes, so they didn't take it down.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah. But like, we sell emissions control equipment. Like this, you can't do this.
Huh? That's a weird turn of events.
It was very strange.
Yeah, some companies get weird like that. They think that if you crash or something and they're the sponsor of you, people are gonna like sue them or something. It's weird.
Yeah, it makes sense. A long time ago, I had no feel for that, but now that I work for a larger company, I totally understand why you would never want to associate your company with an amateur effort of any kind. You would want to latch onto something that has a proven track record of professionalism at the very least. It doesn't have to be success. It has to be professionalism.
The Pleasure EVO doesn't have an HR department?
Ooh, Pleasure EVO, not yet. Not yet. It's a wild card. Anything could happen.
Excellent.
All right, great. So you can follow Auto Off Topic Podcast on Facebook, as always, Auto Off Topic on Instagram. Brad, where can they find you?
On Instagram at TSISS350.
And you follow me, Race and Anger on Instagram. I've been posting some throwback photos from rallies from like 10 years ago, because they never made it to Instagram before. So that's kind of fun. And thank you. And as always, you can keep cars analog and aim for the roses.